I was retired. I felt like I was at a place where I've done it all in the MMA space, and felt like there wasn't too many more challenges.
Jon Jones was standing backstage at a Dirty Boxing Championship event in Houston in early February 2026, speaking privately with fellow UFC fighter Buckley High about a condition that had been quietly destroying his body for years, and he had absolutely no idea that someone nearby was wearing Meta smart glasses recording every single word he said. The clip surfaced on TikTok within hours, spread immediately to every major MMA platform on the planet, and what Jones said in that private conversation between two professional fighters sharing medical information they would never discuss publicly hit the entire sport like a detonation that nobody saw coming.
Actually already qualified for a hip replacement.
Oh,
My last training camp, dude, I went to bed in so much pain.
Jones told Buckley directly that his left hip is covered in arthritis, which on its own was already enough to send shockwaves through every corner of the MMA world. But he did not stop there. He went further and dropped an admission so devastating that it permanently reframed his last fight and every training session that built toward it. He said he had already qualified for a hip replacement, and then he said that during his training camp for UFC 309, he went to bed in so much pain every single night that the full human cost of what he was grinding through finally became impossible for anyone on the outside to minimize or dismiss.
I was retired. I felt like I was at a place where I've done it all in the MMA space, and felt like there wasn't too many more challenges.
The fight he was describing was the November 2024 heavyweight championship defense against Stipe Miocic, where the public watched a dominant champion methodically dismantle another all-time great, while behind closed doors, every single night after training, Jones was collapsing into bed with a hip that was structurally crumbling from the inside, on a joint that doctors had already flagged for surgical replacement. He did not lose a round, he did not show vulnerability. He defended the heavyweight championship of the world with the same authoritative precision that defined every title performance of his career. And he did it on a body that was falling apart in ways nobody watching that fight could have possibly known.
Yes, it's been difficult and different. Everything hurts, you know. I'm a lot more sore than I ever remember being.
The most human moment in the entire leaked conversation came when Jones said he has a 3-year-old baby boy and that he wants to use what he has left in his hips for his son. And that single sentence recontextualized everything the sport thought it understood about what Jones was actually weighing when he talked about his future. This was not a fighter calculating the financial upside of one more pay-per-view or measuring legacy points against physical risk. This was a 38-year-old father standing at the crossroads that every aging athlete eventually reaches and doing the arithmetic on how much physical function he has left, not for competition, but for the next 30 years of his life. When Jones found out the conversation had been recorded and uploaded for millions of strangers to watch, his response was immediate and furious, calling the person who posted it an absolute idiot, and making clear to anyone who asked that the exchange was never intended for public consumption and that it was not for everybody to hear. He confirmed to TMZ Sports that the UFC already knew the full extent of his arthritis before the leak happened, which means the organization was operating with complete information while the rest of the world was blindsided. And Jones made the broader point that a lot of fighters walk around limping most days, paying the ultimate price for their health in silence.
I know this process very well. I've been winning championships my whole adult life, and I know you got to suffer.
Daniel Cormier publicly challenged the entire narrative of Jones being an unwitting victim, arguing that Meta smart glasses have a visible recording indicator that activates when the camera is rolling, and that someone as perceptive and environmentally aware as Jon Jones would almost certainly have noticed it during what was supposed to be a private conversation.
Cormier's theory was that Jones deliberately allowed the recording to happen as a calculated way to signal publicly that his body is failing without having to formally announce his retirement, which preserves the option of reversing course again if the right opportunity materializes at some point in the future. To understand why this leak landed with the force that it did, you have to go back to June 2025, when Jones vacated the UFC Heavyweight Championship and the moment Dana White revealed he was in discussions with the Trump administration about hosting a UFC event at the White House tied to America's 250th anniversary. Jones heard about that White House event, and the retirement was functionally over within weeks. He re-entered the UFC's anti-doping testing pool, he began training 5 days a week, and he told anyone who asked that he wanted to headline that card against Alex Pereira in what would have been the most cinematically perfect final fight in the history of combat sports. Dana White repeatedly and publicly closed the door on Jones throughout the entire process, saying at one point that he simply could not risk putting Jones in a big position on a big stage and having something go wrong, and describing the odds of Jones appearing on the White House card as 1,000,000,000 to 1. That number was not a probability calculation. It was a public organizational declaration that the UFC had moved on from Jon Jones, even while Jones himself was grinding through daily training sessions on a deteriorating hip that he had not yet disclosed to the public. Because the UFC already knew and had already made their decision anyway. After the arthritis video went viral and Dana White made it unambiguously clear that the White House card was not waiting for anyone who could not be relied upon without complication, Jones sat down with journalist Helen Yee during Super Bowl week and was asked directly and clearly what his future in the UFC actually looked like. His answer was not a dramatic retirement announcement designed for maximum engagement. It was not a social media post crafted to generate the biggest possible reaction. It was something quieter and in many ways more final than either of those things. 4 words delivered without performance or theater. I think I could be done. The medical reality behind those 4 words makes the case more definitive than any formal announcement ever could, because a hip riddled with arthritis severe enough to qualify for total replacement surgery does not improve, does not respond to treatment in ways that restore elite athletic function, and does not allow the kind of explosive rotational movement that MMA at the highest level demands from every single training session. According to the Mayo Clinic and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, recovery from hip replacement surgery takes 3 months to a full year, and institutions like Johns Hopkins are unequivocal that activities like MMA fighting are generally discouraged afterward due to the risk of implant dislocation, accelerated prosthetic wear, and catastrophic further joint damage. Tom Aspinall holds the undisputed UFC Heavyweight Championship now. The division is not paused. It is not holding a spot warm. Contenders are rising through the ranks and fighting each other for position, and the massive organizational machinery of the UFC continues moving forward with the complete indifference to the Jon Jones retirement timeline that it has been demonstrating since June of last year. The White House card that was supposed to serve as the grand cinematic finale of the greatest career in mixed martial arts will proceed without Jones, and the heavyweight division that he dominated with a ruthlessness no other fighter in the sport's history ever replicated now belongs entirely to someone else to define and build. Jon Jones did not lose to another fighter. He was not knocked out or submitted in a way that put a stain on a record that stands as the most dominant in the history of mixed martial arts. He was defeated by time and biology and the accumulated physical toll of 2 decades spent at the absolute highest level of the most punishing sport on the planet. The greatest career in the history of mixed martial arts is over. The body has already rendered its verdict. The UFC has already moved on. And Jon Jones, for all his career-long refusal to acknowledge any limitation placed on him by any opponent or any circumstance, appears to have finally arrived at a genuine and quiet peace with the only honest answer the arithmetic of his situation allows.